good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice Radio. So today, we're going to be doing a requested video. You see the lovely Jason Stopka over on Pateon, patreon.com/PTCGRadio. He is a supporter, and he is a supporter of the tier where once a month he gets to go, "Oi, Wossy, go make me a video." And he has. And this month he said, "Wossy, go make me a video about the state of the Pokemon TCG meta, the current state of the game." And I thought, you know what? That sounds like an awful lot of fun. So I totally did. Or to be more precise, the way you're hearing it, I already have. From my point of view, I'm just starting out doing so. So, where we are at the moment, we have 3 big decks. There are 3 Pokemon that are really ruling the format, although you could argue for a 5th if you so wanted. On the one hand, we've got Zoroark. Zoroark won't go away. Zoroark is the card which just has been hanging around ever since Shining Legends came around a little while ago. It's got Riotous Beating for a double colourless energy, doing 20 damage for each of your Pokemon in play, and Trade lets you discard a card from your hand and then draw 2. Now, more recent lists have been tending towards using Makago, whereby you can put whatever card you like on top of your deck, guaranteeing you hit it with Trade. Or Bayonet. Now, Bayonet does a couple of things. First of all, it's a Psychic-type attacker with resistance to fighting, which is great because Buzzwole is not very nice to Zoroark. But secondly, Bayonet's got a great GX attack that lets you get any free cards from your discard pile back into your hand. And with both Special Charge and Puzzle of Time having rotated, we don't have Universal Recovery, while Zoroark decks do have Universal Recovery. Now, on the recent regional in Memphis, Tennessee, Zoroark didn't have a great showing. Grant Manley went and got 6th place with it, and there was one more in top 16. But generally speaking, Zoroark just wasn't ruling the roost, so to speak. But Xander Pero did get 3rd place in Philadelphia with Zoroark Bayonet, so it's still very much hanging around. And then there were at least a couple others in top 8. The other big deck that has been for a while is Buzzwole. Buzzwole, you've got Big Daddy Buzz, 30 to the active, 30 to one of your opponent's bench for a single energy, although if you get free energy on it, hits much, much harder. And you can use Beast Ring to accelerate energy onto there. And then, of course, you've got Baby Buzz, Hey Nick, whereby 1 energy, 30 damage, but if your opponent's got 4 prizes remaining, it does 120. Then you've got Diancie Prism Star, where you get to do an extra 20 damage, and this is very often paired with Lycanroc, which has a gusting effect as an ability, dragging one of your opponent's Pokemon into the active from the bench, while also just having a really good GX attack, doing 50 damage for all of your opponent's bench. And it really is Lycanroc here. If we have a look at Memphis, we saw that 4 of the top 8, fully half of them, were Lycanroc, Buzzwole, and there were no other Buzzwole variants. We did see Philadelphia actually did have 1st place Caleb Gedimer with Buzzwole Garbodor, and 6th place Alex Shmensky with Buzzwole Garbodor. That is a Garbodor that does 20 damage for each of your opponent's item cards in their discard pile. So we've lost the ability locking Garbodor, more on that in a moment, but still this is a good partner. And we mentioned Lycanroc. Lycanroc has seen success constantly and still with a bit of the old Zoroark, and that was represented quite nicely in the top 8 of the Philadelphia regionals. I'm talking about Philadelphia and Memphis just because they're the 2 biggest, most recent regionals with around about 800 masters each. The 3rd big deck is the more recent one that came out in Forbidden Light. It's Malamar. Malamar accelerates psychic energy from the discard to your Pokemon, and it actually took 1st and 2nd in Memphis, and it took 2nd in Philadelphia. So shall we say quite a good deck. And there's a bunch of different stuff you can use with it. Obviously, we've got Deoxys here just as a non-GX counter to Buzzwole. One of the things which is pretty important. You've got to have a Buzzwole counter, ladies and gentlemen. It's pretty important that you have a Buzzwole counter. But then we see it with Necrozma GX, for instance. You can play it with Marshadow GX, which then gives you an option for getting a one-hit KO on Zoroark, because then you're hitting weakness on Buzzwole and Zoroark, which are the other two big decks. And we do see it with Dawnwing's Necrozma. It helps you switch your Pokemon, but it's also got a GX attack, which gives you immunity next turn, which sounds pretty gosh darned good to me. And they're the big decks, and they have been for a while. And the problem is that the most recent expansion of the game that we got, Celestial Storm, really did not do much to the metagame. Now at this stage, some of you are probably screaming furiously, "Wossy, come on! What about Rayquaza?" Well, Rayquaza is a great card, and when we still had Max Elixir and we could play proper speed Rayquaza, like at the World Championships, Rayquaza was like full-on, flat-out amazing. Nowadays, we tend to pair it with Vikavolt. And look, Rayquaza Vikavolt's a fine deck, but really it's a slightly upgraded version of Tapu Bulu Vikavolt. It's a decent deck, there's no denying that it's a decent deck, but it's not some kind of like setting the world on fire deck. Yeah, it took 8th and 9th in Memphis, and it did actually get a 5th place finish in Philadelphia, but over the past couple of months, it really has been a 4th place deck behind your Buzzwole, your Zoroark, and your Malamar. And there are other decks hanging around. So Metagross Solgaleo is one that has seen a little bit of play here and there. It's seen the odd top cut, it's come around here and there, and it revolves around Metagross GX and the Solgaleo GX from Sun and Moon. Metagross accelerates energy while having a decent attack and huge HP. Solgaleo has huge HP, but it's also got an attack that does 230 damage while having a built-in switch and a GX attack that accelerates energy, so that's been a pretty good pairing here. It's been a nice little niche deck that's seen a little bit of success, and there's been other decks hanging around. So Lapras Quagsire is one that I've mentioned, which has seen a little bit of play, a little bit of success. It's been winning League Cups in and around, but it did see an 18th place finish in Memphis, for argument's sake. Although unfortunately didn't really see much of a showing in Philadelphia. We've seen that Naganadel Stack Attacker has seen a little bit of play here and there, using Naganadel to do decent damage while having a really good typing, and using Stack Attacker's ability to protect Naganadel while you sit there and smash. But there's not really been very much variety. I mean, the only other deck which has really been seeing serious numbers is something like Malamar, along with spreading decks, maybe something like Tapu Koko, and then using Tapu Lele to move the energy around. But even that really is just a Malamar deck. A slightly different Malamar deck to be sure, but still a Malamar deck. We've seen that Weavile has seen a little bit of play and a little bit of success, but with Zoroark. My point essentially is that the three big decks are Zoroark, Buzzwole, and Malamar, and it's been like that for a while. Forbidden Light brought us in Malamar, but really we've been sitting here for, well, almost a year to be honest, with about the same two decks dominating, while adding in Malamar. And like I say, Rayquaza's seen a bit of play, but since the rotation when it lost some of its speed cards, it really doesn't have the pump that it had before. And there's a couple of trends that we can see which are really essentially helping lead us to this conclusion. First of all, we don't have ability lock. So if you look at the kind of cards I've been talking about in this video, Malamar, Zoroark, Lycanroc, Vikavolt, Diancie, all of them revolve around abilities, Metagross and Solgaleo as well, Quagsire as well. Ability lock is not something we have since Garbodor went away, not unless you count Slacking, and to be fair, we are going to profile a Slacking deck in the next few days. I'm going to show you how you can make Slacking work, but it's still very much a fringe niche deck. Alolan Muck is fine, but it only blocks basic abilities, and most of the ones I've told you about are evolution Pokemon. And sure, you've got Glaceon, but Glaceon has to be active, ergo it has to be its own deck. And we've seen the odd Glaceon Zoroark deck running around doing okay, but it's not been a powerhouse deck. The other trend that we see is we don't have good hand disruption. We've lost N. N was the card you would use to make sure your opponent doesn't have a good hand. Well, N's gone away, and yeah, we've still got Judge, but that's not great for draw. And yeah, we've still got Marshadow, but it takes up a space on the bench. And especially if you come across something like a Metagross or a Bayonet, they've got GX attacks that guarantee a good turn next turn. Bayonet gets 3 cards from the discard, Metagross gets 5 cards from your deck. And it used to be that because of N, they were super dodgy attacks to use. But now that N's gone away, that's not happening. And this combination of no ability lock and no hand disruption has meant that decks that are consistent but could be disrupted, like Malamar, like Vikavolt, are getting better and better and better. Now, we do see some weird little decks popping up here and there. Incineroar is a personal favourite of mine. I love that. That won a League Cup. I did a profile on that. Link in the description. And similarly, Wishy Washy is a nice little deck. Again, I profiled that the other day. I'll pop a link in the description. And these are good, weird decks that have been having a little bit of success. But they're few and far between. Yeah, they're winning League Cups. But when you start looking at 800-person regionals, it's not happening. We're seeing the same 3 or 4 decks dominate. And fine, you'll see the odd Metagross deck coming around, but it's kind of noteworthy because we don't see many of them. And even if you count Rayquaza Vikavolt in amongst the top decks, and I still think it's a step below the others, that's still giving us 4 good decks. So actually, where we are at the moment in the format, there are 3 or 4 decks, depending how you look at it, that are dominating. There's no ability lock and no hand disruption, which means that the format is a lot more straightforward in that you can do what you do, there's less disruption. And things really haven't changed for about 6 months because Celestial Storm gave us Rayquaza. But even at its best nowadays, all that really did was replace Tapu Bulu in Vikavolt decks. Although admittedly it did make those decks better. The good news is, ladies and gentlemen, that if you are worried the format is a little bit stale, if you are worried that it's been a little bit long with the same decks, Lost Thunder is going to be legal in about a month. And that is going to shake things up royally. And I am going to be bringing you a video in the very near future, next few days, showing you how Lost Thunder is likely to change the format. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is a topic for a future video. For now, I want to know what you think about the current metagame, the current state of the Pokemon trading card game. Are you loving it at the moment, or are you just waiting for Lost Thunder to drop? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, but please do remember the rule. Be nice. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at the WOSSON, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all of that, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. But by far the most important thing, as always, is to look after yourselves. Until next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.